Not Beauty was recently launched by SZA, and it was almost an utter disaster. However, there was one very specific thing which seems to have saved it from being the hard flop that everyone expected of it, and that's probably something that you didn't expect. Logistics. To be frank, and to totally break the fourth wall, I struggled to find a narrative to discuss this brand fairly and chronologically as I usually would because of how young the brand is and how strange the media was about it. So instead, we're going to use the 4 Ps, which is a bog standard analysis method for retail marketing, and at the very end, I'll explain how these all come together under who I think is the parent company. So let's start with promotion, as chronologically this actually started first. So according to Glamour South Africa, SZA had teased the lip gloss line back in 2021. And according to Glamour US, SZA had been working on the line for years. However, I could not find any evidence of this, and instead, for me, the first instance that I could find teasing the launch was on February 9th during her sponsored Super Bowl halftime Get Ready With Me with Ulta Beauty. Here, she discussed the products which were used on her face, including how her lips were her own combo of her own branded lip liners and gloss. This is unfortunately important, as the press releases that went along with the halftime show actually don't mention it largely at all, which first really tanks the weight of having the first impression with her audience, and secondly causes some kind of distrust as to multiple sources, including in press releases, both of her makeup artists, Ngozi Ndeme, aka Esther, and Diana Paley, said that it was either Charlotte Tilbury or that it was Pat McGrath, many of which then therefore did not mention that this was the debut of the Not Beauty brand, like Elle, who didn't mention it at all, or they tagged it at the end of the article in a way that's so awkward and clearly panic added at the end of the article, like Allure did. Unfortunately too, this just added to the early distrust in the product line as a whole, as from this point, when it was announced, fans were quick to point out SZA's many lies in regards to her physical attributes, notably her freckles, which she said are natural but consistently are rarely in the same place, her hair, which she also said was real, and her BBL, which she also claimed was real. On the forum Lipstick Alley, user SittinPretty21 said, quote, SZA is deeply insecure. I used to go in on her about this, but over time, I have developed empathy towards her struggles with self-esteem and confidence. It is probably insanely hard being a black woman in the entertainment industry, especially in R&B and rap industry, where black women get little to no support financially compared to their white counterparts, as well as rap/R&B industry have a problem with black women looking ambiguously black. This then led into a very long conversation about responsibility in celebrities' authentic visage, and both understanding and criticism towards SZA's plastic surgery, as well as her resistance to admit how she originally had looked. All of which just allowed a thread of distrust in clearly her most vigilant fans, as there really was so little promotion of the brand back in February at this point when the conversation began. By March, however, the interest would increase after she explicitly announced via TikTok Live that, quote, there is something very special coming soon. It will be available on tour only. I will also be there. It has to do with my lips, your lips. Then 5 days later, they officially announced the brand on the Jennifer Hudson show, where she gave more context to the brand, saying, quote, it's called Not Beauty because I don't really consider myself like a beauty connoisseur. I like to fill a need with things that are functional and that are trusted and that work. And that's just how this is born. So it's called Not Beauty because I believe in just fulfilling necessity and not just making stuff for no reason. This was then followed by their first post on Instagram, all of which obviously saw even more, unfortunately questionable response, because frankly, it's not a necessity to have more lip glosses, and it's also not a necessity to have yet another celebrity cosmetic line. Plus, then on top of that, the promotional footage largely didn't go down massively well either in the promotional aspect of it, though we will come back to some other things that she said about this in a bit. Because in April, they dropped 2 ads on Instagram showing off the new world building for the brand that was once again met with a bit of a strange response, not necessarily positive. Generally, people don't get the whole lumberjack aspect to it. They seem to think that it looked manly, and they thought that the name was strange and somewhat pandering to the anti-beauty market. As well as to a not fan of SZA, it's not really branded enough as SZA for it to read as her merch line. From the outside though, really SZA doesn't have a very marketable brand in herself. She doesn't have that one thing that she is known for. It's kind of the same reason that Beyoncé's many legitimate product lines haven't done so well outside of the merch space. Actually, even the promotion of Not Beauty itself is quite inconsistent in their promo, bearing in mind it's only been out a month and we have these two very different perspectives in these posters. So, safe to say, the promotion of this brand was actively bad. It was sloppy in its rollout, met with almost exclusively negative feedback. People don't seem to like the branding and the world building altogether. It was just bad. This brings me on to the next P, which is product, which is, though, slightly better, but still not explicitly good. Because, as noted before, we really don't need any more celebrity lip glosses, and there was even contention over whether cosmetics in general fitted with her brand. As an artist, she's not explicitly known for having exceptionally special makeup. To quote Scorpio Rising in the forum Lipstick Alley, they said, quote, "I don't get this as part of her brand. I would have suggested something to do with weed or spirituality. Her own strain or a weed pen, her own drink at Erewhon, a collab with a wellness brand or jewelry line." However, in my opinion, if SZA was going to have a cosmetic product to launch with, it kind of does need to be a lip gloss because of how much her fans are known to ask for her lip combo. To me, it's a no-brainer on the prerequisite that it had to be cosmetics, which I do think is true because the people that I'm going to allege to be the parent company, whose identity I'll reveal in a little bit, they may have insisted on this because of the margin being so much greater than with something like fashion. I'm also attributing this, the idea to only launch with 3 shades in the Flesh, Strawberry Jelly and Quartz, to them as well, as it's safer to do a smaller launch for something that they've never done before. The wooden packaging, however, is a bit of a head scratcher, and that obviously comes back to the fact that SZA as an artist doesn't really have a very definable aesthetic. Honestly, if I were looking at this, I may think it's more Doechii coded because she had that whole swamp princess thing. But again, if you weren't a Doechii fan, maybe you wouldn't have got that reference either. In that sense, branding really needed to be for the wider market instead of her niche core audience. The niche will be where the sales come from, obviously, but you can't ignore the power in the promotion of the masses who are consumers of the media, whether or not they actively buy. I really don't have that much else to say about the product just yet, but we will come back to it. But for now, pre-launch, this is all we know, as well as the fact that they're looking into expanding into lip creams, liners, stains, and more, and that they're vegan, none of which is really a differentiator anymore. Moving on to price, this is also something we knew before the launch. So the glosses were supposedly $23, we assumed plus tax, so not cheap, not expensive, but okay for her core audience, especially because of the final P, and the one I have been building to this whole time, place. So place within the 4 Ps refers to the place of purchase, and this is where Not Beauty have done something truly brilliant. It is for this that saved the brand from being the complete flop. So these 3 lip glosses would launch to coincide with her co-headlining tour with Kendrick Lamar entitled Grand World Tour, within which at each location across the US, and we assume the UK, it's not happened yet, there would be a pop-up for Not Beauty where fans, both ticketed and unticketed, can buy the product in a limited time capacity. This is genius. It turns what is essentially an unspecial product into something that has the ability to grow its own core audience of fans through a new method of creating hype. It quite literally creates a tribe of people who are in or in the know, which counteracts the very common problem of celebrity brands where they would have a launch and a life cycle that looks something like this in comparison to something that would be more natural like this. This method of distribution allows them that slower growth that very few celebrity brands are afforded and gives them a better chance at finding longevity in the market. This is all because, firstly, it makes the product more desirable because of supply and demand. Secondly, it encourages customers to buy multiple because of the limited availability. And thirdly, it controls the initial social media response, as literally the only people who are going to be reviewing the product at this early stage are SZA fans. It's absolutely genius. It creates such an incredible amount of demand in this brand. To quote a few people on Reddit, quote, "Honestly, the idea of lip gloss as merch is cute. There was literally no need for this to be pitched as a full beauty brand. Not in this economy, especially when everyone is over celebrity lines. Love SZA, not even remotely interested in buying this." Quote, "I see this more as merch than a beauty brand. Absolutely don't care about this tired. There was absolutely nothing in the world that was meeting my needs, so I just had to make my own beauty product sales pitch when that person's makeup has been done with other brands' products for years. Sure, there is a complete void of pink and nude lip glosses in the world. Where would one even go to find a $20 plus pink lip gloss? It's so tired. Just be honest and say you want to sell some merch and want it to be somewhat useful and relevant for your fans." So, was the response perfect? No, not yet, but it was an evidenced shift in the response to the upcoming launch that as merch, it did have merit. As a cosmetics line, not so much, but as merch, it was kind of interesting. Ergo, it is logistics and only logistics that will go on to be the savior of the brand at launch, especially as by this time it launched and her fans got their hands on their products. The response was just completely night and day. It went from nearly exclusively negative to nearly exclusively positive. To quote Gemarius Jordan, who I was chatting to through Instagram DMs, he said, quote, "Because of the oversaturation of the beauty brands right now, when SZA announced, it was confusing to some to say the least. What could she possibly be offering that I couldn't get with a Fenty lip oil or even Rhode? However, on the flip side, it's successful because this is being offered to her fans directly with the pop-ups. The people who are showing up for her in real life are getting the chance to test the products and give their thoughts to everyone else. There's no influencer, no middleman, just her to her fans, which she has always respected that relationship." Tens of videos poured in, many more that since I'm scripting this have come up, I am almost certain of. Multiple people raving about how good the pop-ups were, how exciting it was to see SZA and even sometimes Kendrick Lamar in this even more informal setting, how buzzworthy the events were, and most importantly, how good the product actually is. Countless reviews of how plumping the lip glosses were. Yes, these reviews were the first time the lip glosses were ever mentioned as plumping, in fact. How glossy they look, how sticky but in a good way they are, how layerable they are. People raved over these lip glosses. There are even several reviews of people who had bought all three original shades, saying that they wish they had bought multiple of each shade because of how good they were. Is it a pinch of salt review because we know that these are dedicated fans? Yes, of course. Absolutely. We are going to have to wait a good while before we see any totally unbiased reviews of the actual quality of the brand. But did these initial reviews also make me check eBay to see if there were any available for resale yet, despite the fact that I am British and I do not have any lips to speak of? Absolutely, yes, they did. And so it worked. This plan to sell cosmetics as merch worked. Sure, they were pitching it as a fully fledged cosmetics line a little too early, and so it did create this incredible pushback, which seemed to cause an almost immediate failure of the brand. But it was this plan of using place as their differentiator which made it so special and made it successful. However, that does bring me on to why, or how, I suppose. Because surely her music label, Sony Music, who also distributes her tour merch, would probably either be tentative or not allow SZA, who has never announced a partner for the brand, to pull along her own brand off the back of their tour, cutting into their merch sales. There's just no way Sony would allow her to compete like this. Which is why I don't think that they did. So Not Beauty's web store, which is not yet up and running, is already run by a company called Ceremony of Roses. Now, Ceremony of Roses is a 2016 launched global media, branding, design, and events company with a full-service media merchandise arm covering every aspect of merchandise sales, production, and distribution worldwide. Which is all very interesting, as the Ceremony of Roses brand, who do run the website, is actually owned by Sony if you follow all the chain up. Which is why I believe this is the first launched cosmetics brand owned by Sony. Now, do take that with a pinch of salt because I actually couldn't confirm it from any legal documents or trademarks, despite how incredibly hard I digged. The trademark itself was filed by Control Corp LLC, who I think are actually called Par 3 LLC. They have the same address, company description, and they're both linked to a man named Michael Perryman, who I did message to ask, but he didn't get back to me. Plus, Control Corp LLC have only ever registered one trademark in the UK, so I do think it's a shell company for Par 3 LLC. Now, whether Par 3 is owned or just outsourced to by Sony, I couldn't tell you. That's why I messaged Michael Merriman, actually. But why Ceremony of Roses / Sony would allow them the trademark is just odd to me if there wasn't some bigger connection going on there. There's definitely at least some ownership gymnastics going on, obviously not in a nefarious way, just in a ooh, isn't retailing interesting kind of way. Either Sony is using Par 3 as a way to test the waters to see if cosmetics as merch can be good and profitable with Ceremony of Roses doing the distribution, all before developing their own thing in-house, or Par 3 is just already owned by Sony and that info is just really, really, really well hidden. Either way, there is no way to know until someone says something somewhere down the line and we figure out this has all been connected all along. And I kind of hope that they do, because this was kind of genius. We don't need another celebrity cosmetics line. We really don't. We do not need any more lip glosses. We really don't. And for that reason, we simply would not have been excited about this brand at all had it not been for the brilliant rollout of logistics that put demand so incredibly high in her core audience. It creates a tribe of people that are in, who have tested Not Beauty before anyone else. The idea to control how limited the product was both in time and place, while putting it somewhere that her top fans will almost exclusively be en masse, allowed them to control who gets their hands on the product first and how excited they are to get their hands on the product, encouraging our first impressions of people that didn't go to the tour to be through the lens of her most dedicated fans, all while making the pop-ups themselves be very beautiful, further encouraging sharing it on social media and us as consumers watching it on social media. All of this is brilliant, evidencing that all a company needs to become special is one single point of difference. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please do make sure to leave a like and to subscribe. For videos like this one, but about fashion brands, please do check out my fashion channel, Understitch, here, and a special thank you goes out to my patrons over on Patreon for their ongoing support. All content used in this video is done so in accordance with the principles of fair use. However, if you have any concerns, please contact me directly at contact@understitch.co.uk.